The story begins with the legendary demon king, Norgodius, reflecting on his defeat. He admits he never imagined his life would end this way, but even as nothing more than a fragment of his former self, his desire for revenge hasn't faded. He refuses to give up and vows to reincarnate, reclaim his power, and conquer the world once again. A sinister laugh suddenly echoes through a small house. The reincarnation worked. Everything seems to have gone according to plan. At least, that's what he thinks. The moment he looks at his hands, something feels off. They're tiny, delicate, and definitely not the hands of an all-powerful demon. Then he hears his own voice, and it's unbelievably high-pitched. Confused, he rushes to a mirror, only to freeze in complete disbelief. Instead of becoming a mighty demon, he has reincarnated as a human girl. He storms onto the balcony, trying to process the disaster. This wasn't supposed to happen. He should have been reborn with overwhelming demonic power, not inside a weak, fragile human body. As he looks across the city, another shocking realization hits him. 2,000 years have passed since his death, and the world has changed beyond recognition. Before he can gather his thoughts, two girls walk up to him. They casually demand money for lunch, claiming they're short on cash. The former Demon King immediately loses his patience. He tells them to make their own food and stop bothering him. The girls look completely confused by his attitude. They remind him that he's just their classmate, then order him to hand over his money. When he refuses, they shove him to the ground, mocking him as nothing more than a worthless pawn who can't even use magic. Getting bullied is apparently part of his new life. As he stands back up, he sighs in annoyance. Some things never change. Every era has its share of idiots. Deciding to teach them a lesson, he raises his hand and attempts to summon the flames of hell. Nothing happens. His confidence immediately disappears. He tries again, but there's still no response. That's when the horrifying truth finally sinks in. This body has absolutely no magical power. Unfortunately for him, the girls do have magic. They blast him with their spells while calling him pathetic for acting tough without any ability to back it up. Once they've had enough fun, they simply walk away, leaving him behind. Instead of giving in to frustration, he starts analyzing the situation. If he's going to rebuild his empire, he first needs to understand the world he's been reborn into. He discovers that this place is called Paradise, an artificial island made up of 5 massive districts. The body he now inhabits belongs to a 15-year-old orphan named Hinami, who attends Swakan Academy through government funding. Sadly, Hinami has spent her entire school life being bullied because she's considered a pawn, someone born completely incapable of using magic. Society itself is divided into a brutal hierarchy. Gifted students known as stars stand at the top, while powerless pawns are treated like trash. Instead of feeling sympathy, the former Demon King finds the entire system fascinating. If the world insists on dividing people like this, then he'll simply destroy the entire system, along with everyone standing above him. His first step is figuring out exactly how weak this body really is. Standing on top of a playground slide, he decides to test his physical abilities. He confidently jumps down, expecting at least a decent landing. Instead, he crashes face first into the ground. Yeah, world domination might take a little longer than expected. As he painfully gets back up, he curses the useless body. Without magic and without strength, conquering the world seems almost impossible. Still, giving up has never been an option for him. Soon, it's time for school. Arriving at Swakan Academy, he immediately declares that this place will become the first territory under his rule. Of course, considering he can barely survive a jump off a slide, even he starts wondering how he's supposed to pull that off. During class, the teacher presents what everyone calls an advanced magic circle and asks if anyone can explain it. The former Demon King almost laughs. To him, the answer is so simple that even a child should know it. The teacher warns the class that the lesson might be difficult, but one of the academy's top students confidently raises her hand. She explains that the circle combines fire and water attributes and carefully describes the order in which magical energy must be infused. According to her, the correct sequence is fire, water. No, actually, she insists it's water, fire, fire, water, and fire. She proudly finishes her explanation as the classroom erupts in applause. Coming from the prestigious Matre family and holding the title of an A-rank mage, nobody questions her answer, except one person. The former Demon King calmly interrupts and says the entire sequence is wrong. According to him, using that order only downgrades the spell into lower-level magic. The proper sequence should be fire, water, water, fire, and water. Only then does the circle reach its true potential. The classroom instantly falls silent. The girl stares at him in disbelief while the teacher quickly checks the theory. To everyone's shock, his correction is actually far more efficient than the method taught for generations. The teacher can't believe such an obvious improvement escaped every scholar for centuries. Meanwhile, the former Demon King is even more surprised. After 2,000 years, magical civilization has declined so much that people now consider beginner-level knowledge to be advanced magic. For him, that's incredible news. If humanity has become this incompetent, then his ancient knowledge alone may be enough to conquer the world. The arrogant girl, however, isn't celebrating his discovery. Humiliated in front of the entire class, she marches toward his desk with several of her friends following behind. Crossing her arms, she glares directly at him. Sophia completely loses her composure. Furious that a mere pawn embarrassed her in front of the entire class, she grabs him by the collar and demands to know how he dared humiliate someone of her status. Outside the classroom, she and her two friends surround him. Sophia Mlet isn't just another student. She's one of Hinami's classmates, an A-rank mage, and one of the Academy's prized stars. In her eyes, powerless pawns exist for one reason only: to obey people like her. With a smug smile, Sophia asks if he'd like to become the next test subject for her magic. According to her, someone who forgets their place deserves a proper punishment. Before she can finish, an explosion suddenly erupts nearby. The girls instinctively turn toward the blast, giving the former Demon King the opening he needs. He calmly declares that he refuses to be controlled by weaklings any longer. The girls stare at him in confusion, wondering what happened to the timid Hinami they used to bully every day. Then he proudly announces that he is the Demon King who will conquer the world, and without another word, he turns around and runs. The three girls freeze for a second before immediately chasing after him. While sprinting through the academy, the former Demon King quickly evaluates the situation. His magical power is non-existent, and this body is so fragile that even one direct hit could kill him. Fighting head-on isn't an option. A spell explodes right behind him. He barely dodges it. Unfortunately, his terrible physical condition catches up with him almost immediately. He trips over his own feet and crashes onto the ground. Even worse, he realizes he's run straight into a dead end. Sophia and her friends slowly corner him, laughing as they watch their helpless prey. Sophia asks if he finally understands the difference between a star and a pawn. Since he dared challenge her authority, she declares that eliminating him is the only reasonable outcome. Her friends mock him, claiming that anyone born as a pawn deserves to be crushed the moment they rebel. The former Demon King calmly looks back at them and asks if tormenting the weak is really something they're proud of. That single comment completely destroys Sophia's remaining patience. She immediately gathers mana and unleashes another powerful spell. The former Demon King narrowly avoids the blast as it slams into the ground, leaving a large section of the area completely destroyed. Sophia smiles proudly before showing off what she calls advanced magic. She even offers him one final chance to beg for forgiveness, claiming she might spare his life if he kneels. He simply tells her there's no need. Before anyone understands what he's planning, he suddenly jumps to the side and shoves a nearby storage shelf. Boxes and equipment crash onto the floor. Among the scattered supplies, 2 glass vials shatter, releasing thick pink smoke into the air. Sophia immediately recognizes the chemicals. They're materials used in magical alchemy. The girls panic as the smoke quickly spreads around them. Standing inside the cloud, the former Demon King smiles. Exactly as planned. Before Sophia can react, he suddenly appears behind her. She desperately begins casting another spell, but she's already too late. The former Demon King grabs a nearby baseball bat and swings it with everything this weak body can manage. The bat connects with Sophia's head, knocking the arrogant mage unconscious in a single strike. Holding the bat over his shoulder, he calmly comments that this is exactly what happens when someone challenges their superior. Then, he slowly turns toward Sophia's terrified friends. His eyes glow with a chilling red light as he warns them never to stand in his way again. Otherwise, he'll kill them. The two girls completely lose their nerve and flee without even trying to help Sophia. Watching them disappear, the former Demon King can't help mocking them. For people who constantly bragged about their superiority, they abandoned their own friend surprisingly fast. Just then, another student quietly approaches. She politely asks for permission to ask him a few questions. The former Demon King instantly turns around, remaining on guard. He hadn't even noticed her presence. The girl introduces herself as a member of the Academy's newspaper club. Curious, she asks if he really defeated Sophia, and a rank mage. More importantly, she wants to know how a powerless pawn managed to accomplish something that should have been impossible. Finally, she asks the obvious question: who exactly is he? The former Demon King immediately realizes this is the Academy's media, and that gives him an idea. Standing proudly, he introduces himself as Demon King Norgodius, the Chaos Demon King who has awakened after sleeping for 2,000 years. He openly declares that his goal is revenge. The reporter nervously asks if he plans to take revenge against the stars. He dismisses the idea immediately. The stars are far too insignificant. His true objective is much greater. He announces that he'll destroy the current order, seize every bit of wealth inside the Academy, and eventually conquer all of paradise. Then he orders the reporter to spread news of his return across the entire world. Completely overwhelmed, the terrified reporter hurriedly nods before running away as fast as she can. Meanwhile, the former Demon King smiles to himself. Surely, once humanity hears that the Demon King has returned, they'll be terrified and surrender without resistance. Reality has other plans. The very next day, rumors about the so-called Demon King spread throughout the Academy. Students gather around the newspaper, reading the ridiculous headline in complete disbelief. Hinami, age 15, boldly declares the conquest of paradise. Some students burst into laughter. Others wonder if the Academy's weakest pawn has finally lost her mind. The newspaper eventually lands in front of the student council president. After reading the article, the president's expression instantly darkens. Without hesitation, he tears the newspaper apart. A mere pawn disrupting the Academy's order is absolutely unacceptable, and in his eyes, that offense deserves punishment. During lunch, the former Demon King begins planning his next move. Before taking over the world, he needs to understand exactly what kind of era he's been reborn into. Still, there's at least one upside to this new body. Since he's living as Hinami now, he discovers she actually knows how to cook. And for the first time since his reincarnation, he enjoys a decent meal. As he eats, he notices a newspaper featuring his picture on the front page. Seeing himself on the cover, he grins with satisfaction. In his mind, this can only mean one thing. His authority has already spread throughout the Academy. Walking toward the school gate, he notices students constantly looking in his direction. Naturally, he assumes they're terrified of the Demon King's return. The reality is, they're just staring at the Academy's newest troublemaker. Later, he heads to the library to investigate the world that exists 2,000 years after his defeat. While reading through historical records, he learns that Paradise is an enormous artificial island created as a center for magical education. Then one sentence immediately catches his attention. The island was built directly above the Demon King's castle, using its overwhelming magical power as the island's primary energy source. He pauses for a moment. His castle is right beneath the Academy. Instead of feeling angry that humans built their civilization on top of his former domain, he starts laughing. This is actually incredible news. If the treasure vault inside the castle still exists, then all of his legendary artifacts should still be there as well. Recovering even one of them would massively increase his strength. Filled with excitement, he tells the castle to wait for its rightful owner before sprinting through the library. The students around him immediately tell him to stop making so much noise. Ignoring every complaint, he heads straight toward the underground ruins. After arriving at the excavation site, he watches humans carefully studying the remains of his castle. He can't help looking down on them. To him, they're nothing more than thieves digging through someone else's property. Sneaking inside the ruins, he confidently declares that everything here belongs to him. Following memories from 2,000 years ago, he searches the familiar corridors until he reaches a hidden mechanism. With a grin, he opens a concealed passage. Behind it lies the treasure vault, exactly where he remembered. Without hesitation, he rushes toward one of the legendary weapons. Raising the blade high into the air, he proudly calls out to the demon sword Galdings, expecting it to awaken immediately. Nothing happens. The excitement instantly disappears. Then, reality hits him once again. Artifacts require magical power to activate, and he still doesn't have any. No matter how legendary the weapon is, it's completely useless in his hands. Disappointed, he realizes that if only he still had loyal subordinates, they could wield the artifacts for him. That thought brings back painful memories. He remembers standing proudly before his demon army while countless loyal followers cheered for their king. Then the memory fades. His expression darkens. Every member of the demon race was wiped out after his defeat 2,000 years ago. Only humans remain. For a brief moment, even the proud demon king falls silent. Back at the academy, he watches students casually eating snacks and enjoying peaceful school lives. To him, it feels strangely wrong. As he wanders through the halls searching for someone useful, he suddenly hears an argument nearby. A red-haired student is cornering a girl who clearly wants nothing to do with him. The boy arrogantly claims that, just like a chessboard, stars are meant to command, while pawns exist only to obey. Despite rejecting him multiple times, the girl is still being pressured into accepting a date. Watching the scene unfold, the former Demon King immediately recognizes the familiar abuse of the Academy's class system. He sighs in disappointment. This rotten society really never stops. Walking over, he orders the boy to stop making a scene and warns that he'll report him to a teacher if he keeps harassing her. The student turns around in annoyance before suddenly recognizing him. "So you're that so-called Demon King from the newspaper?" The boy bursts into laughter, asking if he's actually stupid enough to believe that ridiculous title. The former Demon King calmly confirms everything. Yes, he is the Demon King, and one day he'll conquer the world. The student laughs even harder. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't get to laugh for very long. The former Demon King throws a punch straight into his face, knocking him to the ground. As the boy cries out in pain, he simply comments that ordinary people could never understand someone as great as him. With the nuisance out of the way, he turns toward the girl. Calmly, he invites her to join him for tea because there's something important they need to discuss. Although confused, she accepts. The two move to a quiet bench away from the crowd. He introduces himself once again as Demon King Norgodius, ruler of darkness and future conqueror of the world. More importantly, he's currently recruiting loyal subordinates. The girl introduces herself as Grace and sincerely thanks him for rescuing her. She explains that the student from earlier had been pestering her for dates, despite being rejected over and over again. Even after refusing him countless times, he still insisted that pawns should obey whatever the stars demanded. Hearing that only strengthens the former Demon King's opinion. Human society is completely hopeless. But Grace, she's different. Looking directly at her, he assures her that she has nothing to fear anymore because he'll protect her from now on. Grace awkwardly tries to respond, unsure whether to take him seriously. Ignoring her confusion, the former Demon King confidently tells her something no one else has ever realized. She possesses extraordinary talent. Modern humans simply don't have the knowledge to recognize it. But with the eyes of someone who ruled the world 2,000 years ago, he can clearly see that Grace has the rare talent to master ancient magic. As they walk together across the academy, the former Demon King secretly evaluates Grace. She definitely has potential. For the first time since his reincarnation, he may have found someone actually worth recruiting. Grace glances at him nervously before asking the question that's been bothering her ever since they met. Is he really the Demon King mentioned in the newspaper? More importantly, can someone like him actually be trusted? The thought that he might be dangerous keeps creeping into her mind. Instead of answering, he suddenly stops walking. They've arrived. Looking around the empty training area, he declares that it's the perfect place to begin her training. Grace hesitantly asks if he truly meant what he said earlier. Does she really have talent? The former Demon King nods without hesitation. He explains that modern magical knowledge has declined so much over the past 2,000 years that humanity has even forgotten how to identify true magical talent. That's why someone like Grace was labeled a worthless pawn. Not because she lacked ability, but because nobody alive knew how to recognize it. He promises that he won't overlook her potential. Together, they'll prove every star in the academy wrong. Grace quietly thinks it over. She's still unsure whether this self-proclaimed Demon King is completely insane or genuinely telling the truth. But if following him gives her even the slightest chance to escape her miserable life, she's willing to take that risk. Determined, she asks him to teach her. He accepts immediately. After studying her for a moment, he reaches an unexpected conclusion. Grace has almost no experience using magic directly. Instead of forcing her to become a traditional mage, he'll let her fight with something far better. Walking over to a nearby bush, he pulls out the legendary demon sword Galdings, the very weapon he recovered from the treasure vault. Since he couldn't activate it himself, there was only one option left. Find someone worthy of wielding it. Handing Grace the sword, he tells her to focus her magical power into the blade and swing. Still confused, she nervously follows his instructions. The instant the sword slices through the air, a massive wave of flames erupts from the blade. Grace stares at the blazing attack in complete disbelief. She actually did it. The former Demon King smiles, just as he suspected. His judgment was correct. Grace truly possesses the talent for ancient magic. He tells her to keep training until she completely masters the demon sword. She excitedly agrees. Unfortunately, neither of them notices the nearby wooden bench, until it's completely on fire. The former Demon King casually tells her to grab a bucket before the entire place burns down. Meanwhile, Grace repeatedly apologizes while rushing to put out the flames. Later that day, all of the students gather in the academy's training grounds. The teacher announces that today's lesson will be mock combat. Everyone will be judged on magical ability, physical strength, and adaptability. As always, students are ordered to form pairs. Since pawns aren't expected to use magic, they're allowed to fight with weapons instead. The former Demon King's eyes immediately narrow. This is the perfect opportunity. If fate is being generous, maybe he'll get another chance to humble Sophia. Before he can make a move, the same red-haired student from earlier walks over to Grace. Smirking, he says she'll probably never find a partner anyway, so she should just pair up with him. Grace awkwardly asks what he means. The boy's expression immediately darkens. He still hasn't accepted being rejected. Stepping even closer, he proudly reminds her that he's a star, and stars give orders. Pawns obey. It's that simple. Watching the scene unfold, the former Demon King sighs. This idiot clearly hasn't learned his lesson. He calmly steps between them and accepts the challenge himself. The boy immediately recognizes him as the crazy pawn who punched him the previous day. His face twists with rage. This time, he's going to crush him. The former Demon King simply turns toward Grace. If she defeats him first, then she'll have officially proven everything he told her. The teacher blows the whistle. The mock battle begins. Confident in his victory, the arrogant star tells Grace to attack whenever she's ready. He promises to show her what happens when a pawn dares to oppose someone superior. Meanwhile, the former Demon King casually stands off to the side, eating an ice cream while watching the fight unfold. To him, the result is already obvious. The star charges straight toward Grace, hoping to overwhelm her through force alone. Panicking, Grace instinctively raises the demon sword. With one swing, a massive torrent of flames explodes forward. The blazing attack slams directly into the charging student, instantly blasting him backward. Silence fills the training grounds. Nobody can believe what they just witnessed. A pawn just defeated a star. The shocked student slowly struggles back onto his feet and demands to know what kind of trick she used. Grace shakes her head. It wasn't a trick, it was simply the power of the demon sword. Refusing to accept reality, the furious star gathers electricity around his body and launches another attack. Grace swings the sword again. Another wave of fire crashes into him. This time, he doesn't get back up. Grace stares at the sword in amazement. She can barely believe this incredible power is really hers. The surrounding students are equally stunned. None of them has ever seen magic like this before. Even the teacher can only announce the end of the match in disbelief. The former Demon King calmly walks onto the field. According to everyone in the academy, A pawn could never defeat a star. Grace has just shattered that belief in front of the entire school. He proudly raises her hand into the air and loudly declares that humanity should tremble. Because the unstoppable advance of the Demon King's army begins today. Grace still has no idea whether his grand speeches make any sense. But somehow, ever since meeting him, her impossible dreams have started becoming reality. Just as the crowd struggles to process everything they witnessed, a familiar voice cuts through the silence. The student council president steps forward with an icy expression. In his eyes, this has gone far enough. A pawn has disrupted the Academy's order one too many times, and he has no intention of letting it continue. The entire training ground falls silent as a towering bald man steps onto the field. The atmosphere changes instantly. Even the students who had been cheering moments ago immediately step aside. The student council president has arrived. With an intimidating glare, he declares that the little party ends here. Walking straight toward the former Demon King, he asks if he's Hikari Hinami, the student who's been calling herself the Demon King. According to him, Hinami has already crossed the line far too many times. The former Demon King simply stares back before asking the obvious question. Who exactly is this guy? If someone wants to address the Demon King, they should at least show proper respect. Sophia, still traumatized from their previous encounter, can hardly believe what she's hearing. Almost pleading, she tells him that this is Ishikami Takaru, the student council president and the highest-ranking star in the entire academy. The moment he hears that title, the former Demon King's eyes light up. Perfect. If this man stands at the top of the academy, then defeating him will be the fastest way to shake the entire system. Without hesitation, he casually orders Grace to defeat them all. Grace nearly drops the demon sword. She can only stare at her reckless master in complete disbelief. Ignoring the ridiculous order, the student council president announces that an official investigation will begin immediately. Looking directly at the former Demon King, he says that several unforgivable offenses have already been committed. The former Demon King shrugs. Is all of this really because a mere pawn dared to embarrass a star? If that's the case, everyone is making far too much of a trivial matter. The president shakes his head. That's not the issue. He accuses them of setting fire to the Academy's gym storage room. Grace freezes. The former Demon King also realizes exactly what happened. That accidental training session with the demon sword came back to haunt them. The president then reveals the repair costs, $2 million. If they fail to pay for the damages, they'll both be expelled from the academy. Grace immediately falls into despair. There's no way she could ever afford that amount. The former Demon King calmly tells her not to panic. Then, right in front of everyone, he takes the payment notice from her hands and tears it to pieces. Grace watches in horror. The student council president asks if he truly understands what he's just done. The former Demon King completely ignores the question. Instead, he picks up a wooden stick from the ground, points it directly at the president, and issues a challenge. 3 days from now, the long-awaited battle between the Demon King and the student council president will take place. If the Demon King's side wins, the president will leave them alone. But if they lose, everyone in the academy will become part of the Demon King's army. The student council president's expression immediately hardens. He has no interest in negotiating with someone disturbing the academy's order. Snapping the wooden stick in half, he calmly declares that he'll crush the Demon King's army once and for all. Later that day, Grace and the former Demon King stand together on the academy terrace. Grace still can't believe what just happened. They've challenged the student council, the strongest force in the entire academy. Trying to reassure her, the former Demon King explains that this isn't reckless. It's the perfect opportunity to start a revolution. He reminds Grace that before meeting him, she had been trapped in a miserable life with no hope of changing her future. Now she finally has a chance. All she needs to do is trust him. Grace nods. She wants to believe him. But there's still one huge problem. They're both pawns. How are they supposed to defeat the strongest stars in the academy? The former Demon King smiles. They already possess the key to victory. The demon sword Galdings. He places a hand against Grace's chest to explain that the sword has already opened the path to ancient magic inside her. Embarrassed by the sudden contact, Grace immediately jumps backward with a bright red face. Completely ignoring her reaction, the former Demon King continues his explanation. The moment she wielded Galdings, her dormant talent awakened. That's why strange changes have already begun appearing in her magic. Everything finally starts making sense to Grace. She isn't suddenly becoming stronger by coincidence. Her true potential has finally been unlocked. The former Demon King confidently declares that all that's left now is training. After all, world domination won't achieve itself. Then he suddenly places a hand on Grace's shoulder and calmly informs her that the upcoming duel depends almost entirely on her. Grace immediately starts sweating. That confidence somehow makes the pressure even worse. 3 days later, the Academy arena fills with spectators eager to witness the impossible match. The Student Council president welcomes the former Demon King and Grace, admitting that they deserve some respect for actually showing up. Since the Demon King's army only consists of 2 people, the Student Council has decided to make things fair. Only the president and his secretary will participate. The former Demon King laughs. It doesn't matter whether they bring 2 people or 200. Grace alone is enough to defeat them all. The president quickly corrects him. Grace won't be fighting alone. The duel's format has already been decided. The opening match will be Grace against the Student Council secretary. The second match will be Grace against the Student Council president himself. If both sides finish with the same number of victories, everything will come down to one final battle. The former Demon King against the Student Council president. The former Demon King asks if it'll truly be a one-on-one fight. The president confirms it without hesitation. There will be no objections, no excuses, and no escape. With the entire academy watching, the Student Council president reminds him that everyone is counting on this duel. The former Demon King simply smiles. He gladly accepts. Then he tells the president to enjoy these last few peaceful days, because very soon, he'll be the one lying defeated at the feet of the Demon King. The duel finally begins. Grace and the Student Council secretary step into the center of the arena as the crowd falls silent. The secretary politely introduces herself as Belle Court and, with a gentle smile, jokingly asks Grace to go easy on her. The friendly greeting lasts only a second. Belle immediately summons several sharp ice crystals and launches them straight toward Grace. Startled, Grace instinctively swings the demon sword. A blazing wave of fire erupts from the blade, colliding head-on with the incoming ice. The 2 spells explode on impact. A violent shockwave sweeps across the arena, forcing Grace to shield herself behind the demon sword as dust and debris fill the battlefield. When the smoke finally clears, Grace is still standing, not a single step backward. The students watching from the stands can only stare in disbelief. Meanwhile, the former Demon King quietly watches the battle unfold. His expression grows unusually serious. If Grace loses here, everything falls apart. His plans for world domination will end before they even begin. For the first time since his reincarnation, he actually starts thinking about what he'll do if he's forced to fight the Student Council president himself. That thought alone is enough to make him panic. He desperately searches for a way to avoid that outcome. Back in the arena, Grace calls out to him. Can she finally use ancient magic? The former Demon King immediately gives his approval. Hearing those words, Belle's expression changes. A mere pawn, using ancient magic, that should be impossible. Grace takes a deep breath as a crimson magic circle begins forming before her. Ancient runes glow in the air, while scarlet energy rapidly gathers at the center. A moment later, she unleashes it. A massive crimson beam tears across the battlefield before exploding high above Belle's position. Even before it lands, the secretary realizes one terrifying fact. If that attack connects, she won't survive it. Watching from the sidelines, even the Student Council president shouts for Belle to defend herself immediately. The former Demon King smiles. He remembers this spell well. 2,000 years ago. It erased 500 enemy soldiers in a single attack. There isn't a chance anyone in this academy can stop it. He proudly orders Grace to show everyone the overwhelming might of the Demon King's army. Belle desperately raises her ice sword like a shield. Even she knows it probably won't be enough. The ancient spell crashes directly into her defense. An enormous explosion engulfs the entire arena. The ground trembles, walls crack apart. By the time the dust finally settles, half the battlefield has been blown apart. Belle lies unconscious in the middle of the destroyed arena. The crowd is speechless. The former Demon King bursts into laughter. Now, everyone has witnessed the true terror of his army. He casually tells Grace to check on the defeated secretary. Before she can move, the student council president steps forward. His eyes never leave Grace's sword. He demands to know what kind of magic she just used. The former Demon King immediately answers for her. According to him, there's nothing unusual about it. The only reason nobody recognizes the spell is because modern humanity has forgotten the knowledge that existed 2,000 years ago. The president refuses to believe it. Then his attention shifts toward the weapon itself. There is no possible way a powerless pawn should possess a sword capable of unleashing ancient magic. The former Demon King proudly declares that the weapon has always belonged to him. It is one of the treasures of the Demon King himself. The president falls completely silent. The more he listens, the crazier this entire situation becomes. Before anyone can continue, another student rushes over and whispers something into the president's ear. His expression instantly changes. With visible anger, he accuses the former Demon King of illegally entering the Demon King's castle. That underground ruin is a restricted site controlled by the celestial government, which means the legendary sword was stolen. The former Demon King simply takes the sword back from Grace and looks completely offended. How can someone steal their own property? The castle belongs to him. Its treasures belong to him. And he has absolutely no intention of listening to human complaints about it. Satisfied with the victory, he tells Grace they're leaving. Tonight calls for a celebration. Grace nervously reminds him that the duel isn't over yet. The second match still hasn't happened. The former Demon King waves the concern away. There's no point continuing. They've already proven who's stronger. He turns to leave. Then, something slams into his back. A large rock sends him crashing face first onto the ground. Groaning in pain, he complains that the bald man nearly broke his spine. Looking up, he angrily accuses the student council president of launching a cowardly sneak attack. If they're going to fight, then they should do it properly. The president calmly agrees. Fine. The second round begins now. The former Demon King sighs. Even after witnessing ancient magic firsthand, this man still refuses to understand the difference in power between them. Charging in, head first, is nothing but suicide. Without another word, the student council president raises his hand. The sky suddenly darkens. A massive meteor shower begins descending toward the arena. The former Demon King and Grace both look upward. For the first time, neither of them knows how they're supposed to stop what's coming. A rain of massive rocks crashes into the arena, shaking the entire battlefield. The impacts send thick clouds of dust soaring into the air while violent tremors ripple across the ground. As the smoke slowly begins to clear, the student council president keeps his eyes locked on the center of the destruction. With complete confidence, he smiles. Surely, that attack finished them, but the moment the dust clears, his smile disappears. Standing in the middle of the ruined arena are Grace and the former Demon King, completely unharmed. The president can only stare in disbelief. The former Demon King lets out a mocking laugh before asking if a mosquito had just brushed past him. According to him, the president's magic is so weak it almost put him to sleep. Of course, that's not actually what happened. In reality, he secretly ordered Grace to cast a barrier spell the moment the meteors began falling. Watching his subordinate react so quickly, he silently praises her. She's proving herself worthy of serving the Demon King. The president's expression hardens. Perhaps he really did underestimate them. Magical energy gathers around his hand as a stone handle suddenly materializes before him. A moment later, it transforms into a massive two-handed battle axe. This time, he's done holding back. With a furious roar, he swings the gigantic weapon. A devastating blade of energy tears through the air toward the two of them. The attack barely misses. Reacting instantly, the former Demon King throws himself into Grace, tackling her out of the way just before the slash cuts through the space where they had been standing. Lying on top of Grace after the desperate dodge, he quickly analyzes his opponent. The president isn't a technical fighter. He's simply a monster who overwhelms everything with raw strength. A complete barbarian. The president smirks and asks if that dodge was nothing more than luck. Next time, He won't miss. As the enormous warrior advances again, Grace begins to panic. She desperately asks what they're supposed to do. Without thinking, she blurts out the one thing she probably shouldn't have. Can't the Demon King use magic? The former Demon King immediately tells her to stop shouting the truth so loudly, even in the middle of a life-or-death battle. That secret isn't exactly something he wants the entire academy hearing. Still, he quickly comes up with another plan. Watching the president carefully, he notices the timing of his movements. Then, he suddenly shouts, "Explosion!" At that exact moment, a powerful blast erupts behind the student council president. The unexpected explosion forces him to spin around. Across the arena, students notice one of the academy's ball carts engulfed in flames. Some wonder what exploded. Others immediately assume the Demon King is responsible. They're absolutely right. The former Demon King proudly announces that the explosion was indeed his doing, just another one of his many evil deeds. Then he calmly warns the president, if he keeps attacking, the academy will suffer even more damage. The president glares at him, accusing him of destroying school property without a second thought. The former Demon King doesn't even try denying it. Instead, he threatens to blow up even more equipment unless the president surrenders. Then he loudly orders him to admit defeat. Standing beside him, Grace quietly wonders if this strategy is a little too evil. The former Demon King grins. Of course it is. He's trying to conquer the world. Being nice was never part of the plan. The president clenches his fists in frustration. He refuses to forgive anyone who disrupts the academy's order. The former Demon King simply sighs. Humans really never know when to give up. With a sinister smile, he raises a finger toward the president. Then he quietly gives a single order. Die. The instant the word leaves his mouth, another hidden explosive detonates beneath the president. The violent blast throws the enormous man backward across the arena. Grace watches with her mouth hanging open. The president slowly struggles to his feet, completely stunned. He asks what kind of magic that was. The former Demon King casually walks over to him. There was no special spell. That was simply his magic. Standing above the defeated president with the demon sword pointed toward him, he proudly declares the duel over. Victory belongs to the Demon King's army. After classes end, Grace sits beside the former Demon King as he lies comfortably on the grass. Unable to contain her curiosity, she asks how he really pulled everything off. He finally tells her the truth. There wasn't any mysterious magic. He simply prepared explosives in advance. Grace is completely speechless. The former Demon King explains that he expected a difficult battle sooner or later, so he planted explosives around the arena beforehand as insurance. Even he admits it was an incredibly risky gamble. If his timing had been even slightly off, he could have blown himself up instead. Just imagining that possibility terrifies Grace. She immediately begs him never to do something so reckless again. The former Demon King casually replies that he'll think about it. Then he orders Grace to stop worrying and massage his sore muscles instead. As she reluctantly begins helping him recover, he mutters that the student council members are unbelievably stubborn. Even after losing, the student council president refused to acknowledge defeat completely, although he agreed to overlook the fire incident for now. He also swore that one day he'd eliminate the Demon King's army. While Grace massages his legs, the former Demon King quietly reflects on the battle. Even after winning, humanity still refuses to recognize his rule. Just then, a cheerful voice interrupts his thoughts. "Excuse me." Both of them turn around. A girl carrying a notebook and pen approaches with sparkling eyes. She politely asks if they're really members of the Demon King's army. The excited girl introduces herself as Hayase Riena from the Academy's Journalism Club. Sitting down in front of them, she praises their incredible performance before revealing that she actually came with important news. She hands the former Demon King an invitation. It's from an organization known as the Hall of Peace. Completely unfamiliar with the name, he asks what exactly that is. Riena explains that the Hall of Peace is a mutual aid alliance created by pawns to resist the oppression of the stars. Then she smiles. If the Demon King's army joins them, they could become unstoppable. Hearing that, the invitation immediately sparks the former Demon King's imagination. In his mind, this is the perfect opportunity to recruit an entire army. He pictures himself standing triumphantly on top of a mountain while countless students kneel before him, chanting the Demon King's name. Yeah, his imagination gets a little carried away. As they walk through the academy, Rihanna excitedly explains that the Hall of Peace is holding a meeting today. The group gathers regularly to discuss ways for pawns to survive under the stars. Meanwhile, the former Demon King has an entirely different objective. If he's going to conquer paradise, then the academy has to fall first, and if he wants to take over the academy, the pawns are the perfect place to start building his army. Before long, Rihanna stops in front of a small club room with a handmade sign hanging on the door. With a cheerful smile, she throws the door open and loudly announces that she's brought the Demon King, instead of a warm welcome. They walk straight into an argument. A blue-haired girl with twin pigtails has another student pinned by the collar, accusing him of being nothing more than a puppet controlled by the stars. Grace looks around in confusion, wondering what happened. The former Demon King simply shrugs. Looks like another ugly fight. Rihanna quickly rushes between them, separating the two before things get worse. She reminds everyone that pawns shouldn't be fighting each other. The boy immediately explains the situation. The blue-haired girl wants to challenge the stars to open duels. Everyone else thinks that's complete suicide. The girl refuses to back down. If pawns want respect, they have to fight for it, even if it costs them their lives. The room falls silent. Not a single member agrees with her. Instead, they all look away, unwilling to take such a risk. Frustrated, the girl glares at everyone. She calls the entire room a bunch of cowards before storming out. Rina desperately asks her to wait, but she's already gone. The remaining members quietly sigh in relief. Rina sadly admits that the pawns desperately need unity. The former Demon King cuts her off. Enough whining. It's time for something more important. Remembering why she invited him, Rina quickly gathers everyone's attention. Standing proudly with Grace beside him, the former Demon King steps forward as Rina announces the arrival of the legendary Demon King. The room immediately becomes livelier. Several members excitedly recognize him as the student who defeated the student council president. To them, he's become the greatest symbol of hope the pawns have ever had. The former Demon King clenches his fist and proudly introduces himself as Demon King Norgodius. He boldly declares that he'll conquer the world and promises glory and prosperity to everyone willing to join his army. He dramatically invites them all to fight beside him. Nothing happens. The room goes completely silent. Confused, the former Demon King wonders why nobody is reacting. Grace quietly leans over and whispers that his dramatic pose might have been a little too much. One by one, the club members begin explaining themselves. They're grateful for his confidence. They just don't want to get hurt. Rina tries convincing everyone that the Demon King's army has already proven its strength. Maybe, for the first time, pawns actually have a chance to stand against the stars. One of the boys immediately interrupts her. That's not why the Hall of Peace exists. They're not trying to defeat the stars. They're trying to avoid them. The club's real purpose is sharing advice on how pawns can survive without attracting attention. Starting a revolution is the last thing anyone here wants. Rina can't hide her disappointment. Still, the members warmly welcome the former Demon King and Grace into the club. According to them, having two notorious troublemakers around might actually help everyone else stay off the stars' radar. Then someone suddenly pulls out several pizza boxes. Within moments, everyone is happily eating together as if the earlier argument never happened. The former Demon King watches the scene in complete disbelief. These people have absolutely no ambition. Instead of preparing for war, they're having a pizza party. Disgusted, he calls them gutless cowards hiding in the shadows. None of them deserve to become his subordinates. Then something from the earlier argument comes back to him. Turning toward Rina, he asks about the blue-haired girl who stormed out. Rina explains that her name is Aoi. She's a student from Class 1D and an exceptionally talented pawn. Unlike everyone else, Aoi has mastered ancient swordsmanship and is one of the few pawns brave enough to openly challenge the stars. The others quickly warn him not to get involved with her. According to them, Aoi is a complete battle maniac. She only thinks about picking fights and constantly causes trouble. nobody can control her. The former Demon King's eyes immediately light up. A battle-hungry swordswoman. That's exactly the kind of subordinate he's been looking for. Ignoring the pizza completely, he starts wondering how to recruit her into the Demon King's army. One of the club members awkwardly offers him another slice of pizza instead. The former Demon King simply pushes him aside. He's not here for a party, he's here to recruit soldiers. Without another word, he announces that they're going after Aoi. He orders Grace to get ready. Grace doesn't answer. Turning around, he finds her happily eating pizza with melted cheese stretching from the slice. The former Demon King stares at her in complete disappointment. Grace hurriedly apologizes while trying to finish her food. Meanwhile, Rina happily celebrates Grace's first official bite of pizza as proof she's now a real member of the Hall of Peace. Elsewhere on the academy grounds, Aoi stands alone with her katana. With one clean draw of her blade, she slices a massive boulder clean in half. The stone slowly splits apart before crashing to the ground. As she calmly sheathes her sword, determination burns in her eyes. Her dream has never changed. She wants to wipe out the stars. But reality is cruel. She knows she's still too weak. She can't even defeat the Academy's teachers, let alone overthrow the stars. Unsure of what to do next, she quietly stares into the distance. Then, a familiar voice suddenly reaches her. The former Demon King steps beside her with his arms crossed. Looking directly at the lonely swordswoman, he asks why someone with eyes like hers looks so desperate. Aoi turns around the moment she hears the voice. The instant she recognizes the former Demon King, her eyes widen. This is the infamous pawn who defeated the student council president. Trying to stay polite, Aoi asks what they want, explaining that she's busy. Before she can leave, the former Demon King steps in front of her and proudly introduces himself once again as Demon King Norgodius. Then he studies Aoi's face for a moment. One look is enough. He calmly points out that she's carrying the burden of someone suffering because of the stars. Aoi freezes. For a second, she can't believe someone understood her so easily. Maybe this strange, self-proclaimed Demon King really is different. After a brief silence, she quietly admits he's right. She starts explaining everything. Before she can finish, footsteps approach from behind. A teacher arrives after hearing the sound of the shattered boulder. His eyes immediately land on the giant rock split clean in half. Then they shift toward Aoi. Without asking for an explanation, he begins scolding her. He reminds her that he's already warned her countless times to stop causing trouble. Aoi lowers her head and quietly apologizes. The teacher, Professor Inoda, walks closer with a cold smile. Then he delivers a threat that instantly drains the color from her face. If she causes another incident, her younger sister will pay the price. As he turns to leave, he drops a photograph onto the ground. Without looking back, he casually reminds Aoi to transfer this month's payment before walking away. The former Demon King watches the exchange in silence. The moment the professor disappears, he asks who that man was. Aoi picks up the photograph with trembling hands. She explains that Professor Inoda is one of the Academy's teachers, and he's involved in countless shady dealings. Everything began after Aoi caught several stars abusing her younger sister, who attends the Academy's middle school division. Unable to stand by and watch, she beat them up to protect her. Unfortunately, Professor Inoda found out. As punishment, her younger sister was taken away. The former Demon King immediately calls it what it is: kidnapping. Aoi bitterly shakes her head. Officially, the Academy calls it special education. In reality, the students sent there are forced to work under miserable conditions. The punishment should have fallen on Aoi. Instead, her younger sister volunteered to take her place. Grace stands there speechless. Aoi slowly unfolds the photograph. She explains that every month she buys another picture from Professor Inoda for an outrageous price. It's the only proof she has that her sister is still alive. Tears begin filling her eyes. With the photograph trembling in her hand, she quietly admits that the Academy is rotten to its core. That's exactly why she's determined to change it herself. The former Demon King smiles. Now that's the kind of ambition he likes. He reaches out toward Aoi. Then he makes her a promise. He'll help make that dream a reality. Together, they'll change this world. Aoi hesitates. She wipes away her tears before quietly explaining that she can't use magic. All she really has is her swordsmanship. Grace immediately jumps in. She reminds Aoi that she couldn't use magic either until she met the Demon King. Following him somehow made the impossible possible. Although, she also admits he's a little weird sometimes. The former Demon King immediately smacks Grace on the head for the unnecessary comment. Then he turns back to Aoi. Unlike Grace, Aoi isn't suited for ancient magic. Her real talent lies somewhere else, swordsmanship. Instead of forcing magic onto her, he'll polish the skill she already possesses. He assures her that once she joins the Demon King's army, she won't have to fear the future anymore. After all, the Demon King is destined to rule the world. Meanwhile, elsewhere inside the student council room, the secretary delivers another troubling report. Once again, numerous complaints have been filed against Professor Inoda. The accusations include physical punishment, verbal abuse, and harassment. There are so many complaints that nobody can even keep count anymore. The student council president frowns. Why haven't the teachers dealt with this already? The secretary explains the real problem. Professor Inoda is the son of the director of the Celestial Council. Because of his family's influence, none of the teachers are willing to act against him. Even worse, no decisive evidence has ever been gathered. The president lets out an irritated sigh, as if dealing with the Demon King wasn't already enough. Now he has to deal with corruption among the Academy's own staff. Slamming his fist onto the table, he makes a decision. If nobody else will investigate Professor Inoda, the student council will. Once they gather undeniable evidence, they'll finally be able to punish him. The secretary immediately agrees. For the student council president, anyone who disrupts the Academy's order deserves justice, even if that person is a teacher. At that very moment, Professor Inoda is comfortably relaxing inside his private room. Several students are forced to serve him while he insults them, calling them worthless sinners. One student massages his shoulders while he reminds everyone that they're nothing more than his slaves. If they disobey, he'll simply report them to the director and have them expelled. A frightened girl carefully approaches with a cup of tea. It's Aoi's younger sister. Her hands tremble as she offers him the drink. Professor Inoda looks at the cup with disgust. Then, without warning, he throws the scalding tea directly at her. The terrified girl desperately shields herself as he screams that he asked for coffee, not tea. Falling to her knees, she repeatedly apologizes while wiping the spilled liquid from the floor. She bows her head in complete submission. Professor Inoda watches without the slightest hint of sympathy. A cruel smile spreads across his face. To him, this room is his personal kingdom. As long as he controls the students' weaknesses, nobody will ever dare stand against him. They're nothing more than disposable pawns. Completely insignificant. Then, he senses someone standing at the doorway. Looking up, his smile slowly fades. Standing there with Grace and Aoi at his side, the former Demon King stares directly at him. Calmly, he asks if the professor enjoys pretending to be a king while bullying the weak. Then, without waiting for an answer, he declares that every one of the professor's twisted deeds will be crushed by the Demon King's army. Professor Inoda immediately jumps to his feet in shock. He demands to know who they are and what they're doing inside his room. He said, "I have placed a magical barrier around the room. There's no escape." Standing with her arms crossed, the former Demon King smiles. Now she understands how this man managed to hide all of his crimes for so long. He trapped everyone inside before anyone could expose him. To the former Demon King, though, the barrier is laughably weak. Compared to her brilliant subordinates, it's nothing more than a sheet of paper. With the path secured, she points directly at Professor Inoda. Standing beside Grace and Aoi, she proudly announces that the time has come to judge him. Right then, Rina rushes into the room carrying her camera. The former Demon King asks the only question that matters. Did she get the evidence? Rina grins and proudly confirms that she photographed everything. Every act of abuse, every victim, every crime. Laughing mischievously, she says, Professor Inoda's career is finished the moment those pictures become public. She immediately turns toward the door to report everything to the other teachers. Then, a piercing scream echoes through the room. Everyone spins around. Rina is lying on the floor, her body convulsing. The former Demon King instantly realizes what happened. She stepped into a hidden magic circle. Electricity surges through the trap, shocking her before anyone can react. Professor Inoda smiles confidently. Did they really think they'd leave this room alive? He reveals that the entire room is filled with magical traps. They walked right into his territory. Looking down at them with complete confidence, he mocks their arrogance. Now, he's going to terrify them so badly that they'll never dare oppose him again. The former Demon King simply shakes her head. Someone who only thinks about himself could never defeat the Demon King's army. Helping Riina back onto her feet, she turns toward Aoi. It's her turn. Without hesitation, Aoi steps forward. Professor Inoda pretends to be surprised before greeting her with a mocking smile. Then he reminds her of the one thing he knows will stop her. Her younger sister is still under his control. At those words, Aoi's frightened little sister begs her not to fight. She doesn't want her sister getting hurt because of her. Professor Inoda immediately grabs the younger girl by the hair. Using her as a hostage, he reminds Aoi that she's nothing more than a powerless pawn. If she quietly obeys him, maybe he'll let both of them live. Aoi slowly reaches for the hilt of her sword. For a brief moment, everything becomes completely silent. Then, in a single flash, her blade pierces straight through Professor Inoda from behind. His eyes widen. He can't even process what just happened. Staggering forward in pain, he desperately asks what she just did. Aoi looks at him without the slightest hesitation. Nothing can stop her anymore, not even magic. As she stares at the man who ruined her life, every painful memory comes rushing back. The constant humiliation, the discrimination against pawns, the helplessness of watching people stronger than her abuse others while she lacked the magic to stop them. No matter how skilled she became with the sword, magic always stood above her. That was the cruel rule of the academy, until now. Because the former Demon King gave her something capable of changing everything, the demonic blade Karagachi. Holding the sword tightly, Aoi realizes she finally possesses the power to cut down anyone standing in her way. Professor Inoda roars in fury. He unleashes a massive burst of magic, determined to crush her once and for all. Aoi doesn't retreat. She calmly draws her blade. One precise slash cuts through the air. Her sword collides directly with the incoming spell. The magical attack simply disappears. Professor Inoda stares in complete disbelief. How is that possible? Aoi finally reveals the sword's true ability. Karagochi possesses the power of erasure. Anything cut by the blade can be sent to another dimension, including magic itself. Professor Inoda's attack vanishes as if it never existed. While continuing her assault, Aoi remembers her first impression of the former Demon King. She honestly thought he was nothing more than a strange, overdramatic girl surrounded by equally strange followers. Now, holding a legendary weapon capable of erasing magic itself, she finally understands. Maybe the Demon King really is someone extraordinary. With renewed determination, Aoi launches another series of precise attacks. Every swing forces Professor Inoda farther onto the defensive. The man who once looked down on every pawn can't understand why none of his magic is working anymore, before he can cast another spell. Aoi leaps into the air, her blade flashes. The finishing strike lands cleanly. Professor Inoda is blasted across the room before crashing helplessly onto the floor. The fight is over. Aoi quietly sheaves her sword and lets out a long breath. Moments later, her younger sister runs over and throws her arms around her. Grace and Riina quickly join in, celebrating Aoi's victory. Watching the scene unfold, the former Demon King smiles proudly. This is exactly how the Demon King's army should fight. Soon enough, even the teachers will learn to fear his growing army. Looking at everyone celebrating together, he can't help thinking that world domination is finally getting closer. About an hour later, the student council president and his secretary arrive at the scene. The moment they step inside, they're greeted by complete devastation. The room has been completely destroyed. The president quietly wonders if they arrived too late. His secretary informs him that Professor Inoda has already been taken to the infirmary. Now, the only question is, who was responsible? The president doesn't need to think very hard. Spray painted across one of the walls are 4 unmistakable words: Demon King's Army. That alone tells him everything. His secretary adds that the Academy's teachers have already begun taking the incident seriously, and that the Celestial Council has been informed. The president slowly clenches his fists. The Demon King isn't acting alone anymore. He's gathering more and more pawns, and with every passing day, he's becoming an even greater threat. If this continues, the Academy's entire order could collapse. Narrowing his eyes, the Student Council President makes his next decision. If the Demon King's army keeps recruiting pawns, then they'll destroy the source of those recruits. Their next target is the Hall of Peace.